Hey everyone, this is Carbonite, and today I'm actually doing something a little bit different. I'm going to be bringing you a premium deck profile. Of course, this is going to be Great Nature with a little bit of a Levidras thrown in. Alright, so the whole catalyst for this deck was literally one interaction using the Omniscience Dragon Avank. But as I actually played the deck, there's actually a lot of really cool interactions that you can do with this build specifically. I won't say that I've completely figured it out yet, but I kind of do have a template for what you can play, what you probably shouldn't, and at the end, we'll go over some of the combos that the deck does that are really cool and really fun. So let's go ahead and hop into the deck profile. Alright, so obviously starting off with the grade 3s, we are going to be playing the four copies of Levidras Imperio. If you are familiar with Standard, you probably know exactly what this guy does. His name is treated as the original Levidras, gets 5k for each one, and he also gets their Divine Skill. And then once per turn, you can either put a card from your hand to soul, or counterblast one, and then you create 2 Infinity Eyes markers. But if you put a Levidras, whether it's this one or the old one, you do get 3 instead of 2. And of course, the last skill is just the generic Levidras skill. Whenever something attacks or boosts from a Infinity Eyes markers, you can give it 10,000 power, or you can minus it by 1,000 power if it's on your opponent, and then you can remove it and draw a card. This is basically, obviously this is our main ride target. We need to be riding onto this and then putting Levidras to soul to get the 3 markers. Technically you don't need 3, but you want 3 because it literally gives you the most value, just like it does in Standard. Which means that in this deck, whether you go first or second, you are always going to skip stride, because you do need to play those 3 Infinity Eyes markers, and they're kind of just supposed to stay there for the rest of the game. You don't actually really use that last skill unless you are in desperate straits and you need to live, like you're in the mid to late game. So moving on from that, I'm just playing 2 of the original Levidras. You could definitely bump this up to 3, but the fact that we're playing so many grade 3s in this deck is not something I really wanted to do, so I just am playing 2. You could definitely bump it up to 3 if you're scared, because you do need to see the 2 Levidrases. You need to see this and one other Levidras, and obviously this is the most important one to put into soul, because if you go second and you're not going to stride, you definitely want to have access to that Divine Skill, which is a Soul Blast 1. Create 2 Infinity Eyes markers. He gets plus 10k and crit. Actually gives your Vanguard a little bit of pressure, and gives you an extra 2 Infinity Eyes markers, meaning that you can actually use 2 Infinity Eyes markers on your opponent, because you want to keep at least 3 on board for reasons we'll see later. But just quick note, if you're on Imperio, you can Persona Ride this over. It works either way. Also, you can discard, if you're on Imperio, you can discard the original Levidras as Ultimate Stride cost, because they do actually have the same name. So a little funny little interaction there. Okay, and then the main reason I wanted to play this deck is playing the 2 copies of Charmnet. Now, Charmnet has some funny interactions with this deck, but her basic skill is if you have 3 Infinity Eyes markers, which is why we never use our Infinity Eyes markers, you can just Soul Blast 1 to call her out from the drop as long as you don't have another copy of her. So basically what this does for the deck is Great Nature doesn't really have any recursion, and it doesn't really have like good standalone beat sticks. Charmnet actually does both of those by herself, which is why this interaction in this deck specifically is so good. And then of course her other effect is that if you have an Infinity Eyes markers in the same column, you can retire another rearguard to give her 10k, and then at the end of the battle you can retire herself in order to draw a card. Now with one specific stride, it's actually possible to use Charmnet twice per turn off a single copy. If you're playing if you use a certain combo and you have another extra card in your hand, another specific card in your hand, you can actually use Charmnet 3 times in a single turn, which is actually just insane to think about. That's literally just drawing 3 cards for free. But we'll talk about that once we get to the combo portion. All right, and then the last couple of grade 3s, I'm not super hot on. I kind of just put them in there because I didn't know what the meta was going to be like. We're playing one copy of the Sure Kill Seed Machine Gun. This is the Blitz order that's pay with Counterblast 1. One of your units gets plus 10k, and then your Vanguard gets a skill every time something is placed in the front row rear guard or stands is from the front row rear guard. Your Vanguard gets plus 5k. This is mostly supposed to be for like the Katrina matchup, but I was playing into Neo Nectar's post the ban list. And this really isn't really doing too much. Obviously, we don't know what the meta is going to look like, so you could definitely cut this. Maybe just cut this for like the third Levidras. And then I'm also just playing one copy of Angel Ladder. You know, it's just because I was just going for standard stuff. Like, you definitely don't need to play this. I don't think there's anything that really has removal right now. The one benefit from this is it does give you 1 soul, which this deck can kind of go through soul a little bit faster than you might like. But honestly, if you just balance your resources, you really shouldn't have any soul issues. All right, so moving on into the grade 2s, we are going to be starting off with 3 copies of Crayon Tiger. Crayon Tiger, unfortunately, continuing to be one of the best cards in Great Nature. When it attacks while boosted, you can Counterblast 1 in order to restand one of your rear guards, give it 4k, and at the end of the turn, you draw a card and retire that unit. So the main restand target for this is unironically Sharmnet, which you might be thinking, wait, how are you restanding Sharmnet if you're retiring it to draw a card? We'll talk about that later. But basically, you're just restanding the Sharmnet, and you're going for your 3-4 attacks. This deck doesn't really do much offensive pressure in the early game. You're kind of just farming hand at that point. And Crayon Tiger is really good because when you do your full combo with Sharmnet, you draw a total of 3 cards by the end of the turn because you draw 1 off this, and then you use Sharmnet twice, so you draw 2 cards. Yeah. So one of the main reasons I wanted to... So one of the main reasons I did want to play this deck in Great Nature is because Great Nature uniquely is a clan that has a really easy time finding grade 3 cards. And obviously, you need to have one of each of the Levidrases ideally. So there's always Mika Saburo plays, but I feel like that's a bit too much deck commitment. So what I like doing is I have Blush Your Parakeet, which is a really good card. So on place, Counterblast 1, check top 7, add a grade 3 card. Any grade 3 cards you can search out Angel Ladder, you can search out the Blitz Order, or basically what you're doing here is you have your Sharmnets and your Levidrases that your main call targets. And then this gets plus 3k, and if it's on rear guard, it retires. So this is eating a little bit of our Counterblast, but it's the price for consistency. And just like finding your 2 pieces is pretty easy in this deck, just thanks to this and obviously like our grade 3 searcher. So finally getting into some of the spice of this deck, I'm playing 2 copies of Huli currently. Huli is just absolutely insane in this deck, and I'm definitely considering bumping it up to 3 to maybe 4 copies because there are so many funny interactions that you can do with Huli because she doesn't really have any restrictions. So when she's placed on rear, if your Infinity Eyes marker is in the same column as this, so like I said, that's another reason why you'd never use your Infinity Eyes markers. Counterblast 1, choose a grade 3 or less card from your drop, call it to rear. Then if you have 3 or more, another reason why you're always keeping 3, she gets plus 10k. So unlike the card Saphira, the Keter Soikea, she does not have the restriction of when placed from hand or when placed except during the battle phase. Meaning that if you can call her during the battle phase, you can use her skill and basically just call another thing to your other column. Now, of course, in this deck, we don't have any way to get XL markers, so she is able to extend our attacks. Another thing you can do with her is you can call her during your opponent's battle phase and reborn something like, hey, maybe a Hanali that they like put into your soul or you had to discard. And you can just like stop them there and then, while also getting like the 10k shield out of Hanali, because you can just guard with the 10k shield Hanali, and then later you can just call Huli from your hand, call back out the Hanali, and just like have it on board. So many cool interactions with this card. Definitely would consider bumping this up to at least 3, but I kind of just didn't have the space in this initial build. All right, so moving on, I'm actually just gonna go, I'm playing 2 copies of the Ride Fixer for Great Nature. This card doesn't really do anything. It obviously has a Ride Fixer skill, which is, honestly, you probably don't need this. I was mostly playing it just to see, to make sure I hit all my targets, because it can search you this, This is really important, and then of course it finds your grade 1s, which are somewhat important, but not overly. But you know, right fixer skill, and then the other skill is that when attacks while boosted, Soul Blast 1, you mill the top card of your deck. If it's a normal unit, you give 2 things 5k, and then if it is trigger unit, you choose 2 of your opponent's rear cards and retire. So technically, if they have annoying things on board, this is kind of a way to get rid of stuff, but it's a gamble to get rid of stuff, so it's not really that good. But the other reason is you only have 2 front row rear guard circles. I know Levidras' whole thing is attacking from back row, but we're not actually doing that. And obviously, if this was attacking from back row, you can't boost it. So these are both things that need boosting, so they need their whole column. So you're probably never going to be calling this because, you know, you already have your 2 front rows committed to other things. All right, so moving on into the grade 1s, we're gonna start off with the 3 copies of Mini Belly. I did cut him down to 3, mostly because I needed space for other things. Some other things that I don't think I should play anymore, so maybe I'll bump this up to 4. But of course, this is your typical on plays check top 5 for a grade 3, add it to your hand, and then of course, if you add it, choose a card, discard it. Unfortunately, his plus 5k skill is never going to be active in this deck because you need to have something on an Axel circle, which you don't have any access of getting to in this deck. But basically, he's just there to help you find your Levidrases. Him plus Blush or Parakeet tends to be enough to find your grade 3s, because you do need to find basically 3 specific grade 3s in this deck. Being you want to see a Sharpnet, you want to see a Levidras, and you need to see another Levidras. Preferably the original one, just because it's better. But yeah. Moving on, we do actually have 2 copies of the Label Pangolian. This deck does eat through a lot of CB, not so much Soul, but he's just here to be that extra counter charge. So GB1, when he's placed, you choose one of your rear guards, and then until the end of turn, it gets the red text skill that then battle attacks a Vanguard. If it is at 20 character, you soul charge 1 and counter charge 1. So your main target for this is Sharpnet, because Sharpnet gets power until the end of the battle as well. So what you do is Sharpnet gets herself to that 20k threshold by herself just by retiring something. So at the end of the battle, you would proc her red text skill, and then you would finish resolving the power loss. So she would go back down to 13 after you counter charge and soul charge. I'm pretty sure that's how it works, but of course I could be wrong about that. I'd have to like double check the extensive rulings, but I've just been playing like it works like that. Next up, we are just playing 3 copies of Honolly. Like I said, there's a lot of fun interactions you do with Honolly. You can call it during your opponent's battle phase. You can call it from the drop zone with Huli, or you just call it from hand. Once again, I don't really know what the meta is going to look like, so maybe we keep 3 Honolly, maybe we go down to 2, maybe we play just 1. But whatever it is, you know, maybe play some level of Honolly. And then moving on to more, these are like more flex slots. You don't actually need to play them. We finally got access to Great Nature's G Guardian V promo. It has skills, but you're just using it as a discard for heal guardians. So it's just there to be your 5th heal, basically, because your G Guardians are absolutely cracked. Playing 1 Courtier, this really doesn't do anything. In case you don't know, the play with this is you call it during your opponent's battle phase. Use its skill to mill Blitz Order, basically being Elementaria or the Surefire kill, and then you can actually play it during your opponent's turn, but it's just a cute little combo that doesn't really work that much. I'm playing 1 Habitat because there's some cards like Crayon Tiger and Sharpnet that I want to see, but I don't want to play like more copies of them. And this is kind of just like a standard philosophy where it's like, if you don't want to play more copies of a certain card, just throw in a Habitat to like kind of serve as the extra copies of those cards. And then of course for our last card, we saw it already, just the Elementaria. All right, so moving on into the trigger lineup, I am going to be playing the 4 Pawn Belly. Obviously, we don't have any big bellies, so it's just if you damage check it, you draw a card. Because unlike a traditional Great Nature deck, this one does not have access to as much draw power, like inherently. I'm currently playing 4 Solin crits, but I think I'd probably switch these up to be the Stride Fodder crits, just because I found myself having to like hard stride a lot of the times. Like you would think you wouldn't, right? Because you play so many grade 3s, and you also have like Sharpnet, which is like the perfect, what's it called? Stride Fodder ditch, because you ditch it and then it calls itself back. But I don't know. I just kept finding myself not having the stride cost. But it doesn't really matter. Like I said, you're not like super necessary on Soul, so you might as well just play the Stride Fodder one, I think. I could always be wrong about that though. Like I said, you can always change this however you want. We're playing 4-drop PGs because like I said, this deck does not have as much draw power, so you're not in danger of really decking out as quickly. And then just, you know, gives you more space in the main deck. For heal triggers, we're going a 2-2 split on the resource heals plus the grade 3 heals. Obviously, this is searchable, this is not, but yeah, like I said, sometimes you do need that extra counterblast, so just having access to him is pretty cool. Of course, we're just playing Blessed Favor for our OT, and then our starter is just a V starter because it's good. All right, so to get into the spice is the 2 copies of Avank. So Avank is a pretty old card. His skill is Counterblast 1 G-Flip. Choose any number of your rear guards until the end of turn. They get the Kant skill, Rear Guard. This unit cannot be retired by card effects. And then he gets plus 4k for each rear guard you chose. Which, in case you don't know, you can attempt to retire a card for cost, even if it cannot be retired. And in that case, the card doesn't get retired, and you still get the effect because you effectively paid the cost. So this is a way you can actually use Charmnet like 2 to 3 times per turn. What you do is you choose Charmnet. Charmnet can no longer be retired by card effects. And then of course you would pick something else because Charmnet needs something to retire. So you swing with the Charmnet. I'll show this in the combo, but you swing with the Charmnet, retire the thing that can't be retired, so she just gets 10k. And then in the battle, Charmnet retires herself, or attempts to, but she can't be retired by card effects, not even her own. So you just draw a card, and she stays on board. Meaning that you can restand her with Crayon Tiger, which is insane, which means you can swing with Charmnet again, use her skill again, get another 10k. Do remember it only lasts the battle, so she's just gonna be 23. And then retire her again, and draw another card. So currently I'm playing 2 Avank. I'm probably gonna cut this because you go into Avank once, you do the silly play. That's typically your first strike turn, and then you honestly have better things to go into at that point. Like you could do it again if you really want to farm hand, but I'm thinking you really only need to go into it just once. But aside from that, the rest of the G zone is kind of just like pretty flexible. There's this, you could reverse stack theoretically, and it is like solid enough. There's this, Bilar always being our main goat. Soul Blast 1, get 4k for everything in the G zone. And then of course on hit skills as well. Drawing cards is pretty cool. And yeah, this is basically your finisher. Magnetic Armor is actually super cracked in this deck. You don't stride into it. This is part of your first stride turn, because what you do is you Counterblast 1, flip this, and then Magnetic Armor actually does have a skill from the G zone, which is when your Vanguard attacks, you can Soul Blast 1 to choose a card from your hand and call it to rear guard, which we'll talk more about when we do our combo plays. But if you're paying attention during the rest of the deck profile, you'll know that that is how you extend your combos. This is just like if, I guess if you get damage denied and you have no CB, this is just flip, get 10k to everything. You're probably not going to be able to hit the 30k because Charmnet loses the power at the end of the battle. So even if she's at 23k and she goes up to 33, at the end of the battle, she's going back down to 23. So you're not going to be able to really achieve that. So once again, another thing you can cut. I'm playing one of this just to, prevent yourself from getting decked out, which doesn't really happen. I mean, it kind of can. And like hitting 25 might be a little bit of a problem for this deck. I'm not sure exactly how you would do it, but it's there. Zoa, just because I have space, and like I said, you can ditch original Levidras while you're on Pyrrho to stride into Zoa because it does have the same name. Ferniganius, this is supposedly for the Link Joker matchup, but you don't really need it. For our G guards, we are playing Kundalini, just because like more counter charge is always good. I'm basically playing one of all the good G guards. One this because it's PG. One of Sakanth. Sakanth is really good. One RDO just because he's a free 25k shield. And then of course the Almirage for the funny plays. Maybe you could bump this up to 2 if you really want. And then of course we do have to play the one of Messiah in order to get our Guardian ticket. Alright, so let's go ahead and go over some of the combos you can actually do with this deck. Being a Persona Ride deck, you can actually like add Persona Ride to this, but for this, obviously I'm not going to be using that. So one cool thing that you can do with this deck is you can actually discard Charmnet, or to actually stride, and then you can just go ahead and Soul Blast 1 in order to call her back, because you do have the 3 Infinity Eyes markers. Obviously, like I said, you're going to create the 3 Infinity markers before you do anything. What you ideally want to do is have a Crayon Tiger and a booster. Obviously, you need a booster, giving the skill there. So you're actually gonna need some Counter Blast for this. You need like 2 Counter Blasts in order to do this. If you have the label Pangolian, basically just 2 Counter Blasts in all honesty. But let's go ahead and we use Avank's skill here. We would Counter Blast 1, flip the Magnetic Armor, and choose 1, 2, 3. He gets plus 12, and then, you know, all these units cannot be retired by card effects. So normally, what you do is if you don't have access to an extender, basically just Huli, you would probably just swing Van first, stack all effects onto Charmnet. Charmnet would swing. Using her skill, you can retire Crayon Tiger. But thanks to Avank's skill, Crayon Tiger can't be retired by Charmnet's ability, meaning that you just get the 10k. Then at the end of that battle, use Charmnet's skill to attempt to retire herself, but she also cannot be retired by card effects. So you would just draw another card. Then you would swing with the Crayon Tiger, use its skill. Oh, obviously we would countercharge 1 off of this since she is at 20k or greater. Swing the Crayon Tiger, counterblast 1, restand the Charmnet, give it 4k, and then of course you do the same thing again. Swing, retire the Crayon Tiger. It doesn't really matter because neither of these can be retired by card effects. And then get 10k, and then the other battle, retire her and draw yet another card. And then of course you would countercharge, soul charge, whatever. Now the other play, if you do have the Huli, is since we flipped the Magnetic Armor, what you can actually do here is you can swing the Charmnet first. Same thing, retire this, get 10k, whatever. Swing the Crayon Tiger here, counterblast 1 for it, restand this, and then you swing the Charmnet again. Basically doing the exact same thing. And then you would swing with your Vanguard, Soul Blast 1, call out the Huli, retire the Charmnet, Huli's skill activates, counterblast 1, call back out the Charmnet over the Crayon Tiger, and now you have 2 more attacks. So you go 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you would swing Huli. Since you have the 3 Infinity Eyes marker, she's at least 20k, so she should be able to hit. Yeah, she will be able to hit because like nothing's gonna be like 20k base or greater. You swing the Huli, and then you swing the Charmnet again, and you're like, oh, I have to retire something. Wait, this guy is still on board. He still can't be retired by card effects, so I'll just retire that. But in this case, you do of course have to retire this Charmnet, and you draw yet another card. You go to end phase for both those plays, and you draw another card off of Crayon Tiger. Alright, so that's going to do it for my deck profile of this premium deck. Not sure how much you guys are going to like it. If this video ends up getting like 500 views, maybe I'll continue with some more premium content. But if this video doesn't really do too well, I'm probably just going to stick to standard stuff and just like cook my premium on the side. But I hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to do those YouTube things, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.